Mom and Dad decided to leave all 8 rental properties to me, my brother said, lifting his glass like he owned the room. Tegan. Sorry, you get nothing. Applause exploded. Someone whistled. My cousin clapped Ryan on the back. His fiancée beamed. My mother dabbed at a proud tear. I didn't clap. I didn't blink. I looked straight at my father and said, calm as ever, Dad, you forgot one thing. Didn't you? 30 people went silent. You could hear the AC hum. Before I continue, thank you for being here with me. If you've ever sat at a table where your family cheered for your loss, your support with a like, a comment, a share, or a subscribe truly means a lot. I read every message with genuine gratitude. My name is Tegan Whitaker. And that afternoon in Tampa looked like a coronation. White tents in the yard. Shrimp trays sweating on ice. Champagne flutes raised like proof the future was settled. If you'd met us then, you'd think we were the perfect Florida success story. Big house. Boats. Smiles rehearsed for December cards. What the pictures never showed was the quiet hierarchy that ruled everything. Ryan had always been the son. From Little League to high school quarterback. People leaned toward him. Forgave him faster. Listened longer. He stayed local after graduation and helped manage Grandma Margaret's rentals. Every barbecue ended with someone calling him the future of the Whitaker name. I learned early to live in his shade. Birthdays meant his cake first. His gifts opened loudest. When I asked for extra math tutoring, Mom said money was tight because Ryan needed new cleats. When I earned a full scholarship to the University of Georgia, Dad said, guess someone has to leave Florida. So I did. Atlanta gave me air. I became a junior analyst at a commercial real estate firm and learned how deeds and trusts work. How ownership moves quietly when someone knows what they're doing. I still came home when Grandma asked. She was the only one who listened without comparing me. On her porch overlooking the bay. She let me talk about cap rates like poetry and handed me keys to walk properties alone. Telling me to feel the weight of real ownership even if no one else knew it yet. When she grew thinner, her eyes stayed sharp. She started asking about protecting assets from people who managed too loosely. I answered honestly, because she never used my knowledge to prop someone else up. 13 months before she passed. She called me down on a Tuesday. No explanation. Just that she needed my eyes. She slid bank statements across the table. Over 18 months. Hundreds of thousands in rent had vanished into maintenance and fees. The handwriting matched Ryan's. Your parents would defend him. She said, by the time someday comes, there will be nothing left. Then she opened a second folder. A living trust naming me successor, trustee, and beneficiary of every rental. Quitclaim deeds ready to transfer immediately. No probate. Private. Recorded and ironclad. Why me? I asked. Because you see what these houses are. She said, families. You won't bleed them. We signed the following Monday. She made me swear to silence until someone tried to take what was no longer theirs to give. We burned extra copies and watched the smoke curl into palms. For 2.5 years, nothing looked different. Ryan bragged. My parents praised. County records quietly listed me as owner because no one bothered to look. After the funeral, Mom asked me to stay an extra day. A waiver waited on the table, sign away any claim for clarity. I refused. They called me difficult. I left 2 weeks ago. The invitation arrived, a celebration of Grandma's legacy. The victory lap. I packed a rolling suitcase with labeled folders and drove 9 hours south. Calm settling in my chest like before closing a deal. Back in the living room. Ryan raised his glass again and claimed it all. Cheers peaked. I rolled the suitcase forward, clicked the latches, and laid out the recorded deeds and trust. The family attorney checked stamps and looked up. Voice flat. These are recorded. Tegan is the legal owner. There is nothing to distribute. That was when I smiled and said it again, softly. You forgot one thing. The cheer didn't die so much as curdle. My mother laughed first. A brittle sound. This is a misunderstanding, she said, already reaching for the papers like she could smooth them flat and make them wrong. My father's face hardened into the look he used on contractors. Ryan stared at the deeds as if they were counterfeit bills slipped into his palm. The attorney adjusted his glasses and repeated himself. They're recorded, he said. Quiet title. No probate. Ms. Whitaker is the owner. Ryan scoffed. You're saying my sister stole from us. I'm saying... The attorney replied evenly. That ownership transferred years ago. My father stood. Will contest. He snapped. She influenced Mom at the end. I didn't raise my voice. Grandma signed 13 months before she passed. I said, with independent counsel. Twice. My mother turned on me. Eyes shining. How could you do this to your brother? I breathed through the familiar pull to apologize. I didn't do anything to him. I said, I protected what she built. Ryan finally found his footing. You always hated that I stayed, he said loudly. You left, and now you're punishing us. A cousin nodded. Someone murmured agreement. I felt the room search for a villain that wasn't the golden sun. The attorney flipped to a ledger. Before anyone files anything, he said, you should see this. He slid copies across the table. Maintenance fees paid to an LLC registered to Mr. Whitaker's address. Over 18 months. Ryan's jaw set. That's compensation. For what scope? The attorney asked. Silence answered. My father barked. This is private. It stopped being private when the assets moved. The attorney said. I watched my parents recalibrate. Their anger shifting into calculation. Fine. My mother said softly. Then sell. We'll split the proceeds like family. No. I said, these houses fund people's lives. We're not flipping them for a payout. Ryan laughed. Sharp. Listen to her talk like a saint. The attorney closed the folder. Ms. Whitaker will be conducting a forensic audit, he said. Effective immediately. My father pointed at me. You'll regret this. I met his eyes. You already taught me to. Chairs scraped. Conversations broke into hissing clusters. Phones came out. The party dissolved into something feral. I packed the documents back into my suitcase while Ryan paced, calling someone who wouldn't answer. As I rolled toward the door, my mother grabbed my arm. You're tearing us apart, she whispered. I looked at her hand and gently removed it. I didn't, I said. I stopped holding us together. Outside, the heat pressed down like a lid. I sat in my car and let my hands stop shaking. The audit emails began pinging before I turned the key. Vendors, banks, property managers, a map of obligations and truths waiting to be read. I drove north that night, the bay lights shrinking in my mirror, knowing this was only the opening move. Because people who lose a crown don't accept it quietly. They try to take it back. The first public hit came at the Tampa Bay Property Owners Association luncheon. The kind of midday event where gossip wears a blazer. I went because Grandma's rentals were on the agenda. And because Ryan had started telling anyone who'd listen that I was stealing the family legacy. The ballroom smelled like coffee and lemon polish. Name tags flashed. People smiled too hard. Ryan was already there, surrounded by familiar faces, acting like the wronged hero. When he saw me, he raised his voice on purpose. "Hey everyone," he said, clapping once. "Here's my sister, Tegan. She just blindsided our parents and took my grandmother's properties." A few heads turned, a few eyebrows lifted. Someone whispered, "Is that true?" I kept walking, calm on the outside, heart hammering in my ribs. I'd survived boardrooms. I could survive a ballroom. The association president invited me to the front for a short update. Before I could speak, Ryan stepped beside me, smiling for the crowd. "She should tell you why she did it," he said, "and why she's about to sell." "I'm not selling," I replied into the microphone. Laughter bubbled from Ryan's side. "Sure," he said, as if I'd said the sky was green. The president cleared his throat. "Ms. Whitaker, please proceed." I started with facts, recorded deeds, the trust, the continuity plan. I kept my tone professional, like I was presenting quarterly numbers, not family betrayal. Then Ryan cut in again. "Ask her how she got Grandma to sign," he said. "She was sick, confused, easy to manipulate." That word landed like a slap. Not because it hurt me, but because it dragged Grandma into his theater. I looked at him. Grandma was sick. I said, "But she was never confused about you." The room quieted. I opened my folder and handed the president a single page. "This is the notarized capacity letter from her physician," I said, dated the same day she signed. It was her request. Ryan's smile twitched. A man in the front row raised a hand. "Ryan, didn't you manage those units?" Ryan straightened. "I helped." "Yes. And is it true?" The man continued. "That tenants complained about repairs being billed but not done?" Ryan's eyes flashed. "People complain about everything." The man didn't sit back. "My daughter rents Unit 3B. He said, "She sent me photos of mold last summer. You charged her for remediation, and nothing changed." A murmur rolled through the tables. I hadn't known his daughter was a tenant. Grandma must have. She always seemed to know who needed protection. Ryan's voice rose. "This is a witch hunt. Then show the invoices." Someone called. Another voice chimed in. "My cousin said their deposit was withheld for damages that weren't there." The room turned from curiosity to accusation in under 30 seconds. The way crowds do when they smell weakness. I held up a hand, not to save Ryan, but to keep control. "An independent audit is underway." I said, "If there were errors, they'll be corrected. If there was misconduct, it will be addressed." Ryan grabbed the microphone from the stand. "Listen to her," he shouted. "She's trying to look noble while she ruins us. She never cared about this town." I took a slow breath. "You're right," I said into the second mic the AV tech handed me. "I didn't care about applause. I cared about tenants having heat in winter and roofs that don't leak." Ryan sneered. "You think you're better than me. I think you're scared." I said. His face hardened. "Sue me." He spat. "Let's see how far your paperwork gets you." I looked at him and realized he'd already decided to burn everything rather than admit he'd been wrong. So I did the only thing Grandma trained me to do. When someone starts shouting, I stopped talking and started documenting. I stepped off the stage, handed my notes to the president, and walked out of the ballroom without another word. Outside, my phone buzzed with texts from relatives, calling me greedy. I didn't answer. I opened a new note, luncheon incident. Witnesses. Statements today. Ryan's voice still echoed behind me like a tantrum in a cathedral. The audit didn't roar. It clicked. Numbers lining up. Dates snapping into place. Patterns surfacing where excuses used to live. Within 10 days, the forensic firm delivered a preliminary report that read like a map of neglect. Inflated maintenance invoices tied to Ryan's LLC. Deposits withheld without justification. Late fees misapplied. Repairs billed and never performed. The kind of mess that grows when no one expects to be checked. I scheduled a call with property managers and tenant reps first. Not lawyers. Nothing changes for you. I said, rent stays where it is. Repairs get logged and verified. If you were charged for work not done, you'll be credited. Silence on the line turned into relief. One woman cried. Another asked if she could finally get the roof patched before hurricane season. I promised dates and put them in writing. Ryan called that afternoon. Straight to voicemail. Then again. Then, my mother. We need to talk, she said. Voice clipped. Privately. There's nothing private left. I replied. My father took the phone. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. It's exactly as big as it is. I said, the audit speaks for itself. They pivoted fast. Let's settle. My mother said, you keep some. We keep some. We'll say it was a misunderstanding. I pictured Grandma on her porch, fingers tapping the rail when she was deciding something hard. No. I said, we'll correct the harm. Then we'll see. An email from the bank arrived next, requesting documentation. I sent the report and the trust. 2 hours later, they froze the account Ryan used for fees. Vendors followed. A contractor admitted he'd been paid twice for the same job at Ryan's direction. Another said he'd been told not to talk to tenants. The county inspector scheduled visits. Ryan showed up at my parents' house that night and yelled until the neighbors called it in. By morning, his lawyer emailed a proposal, voluntary repayment over time. No admission of wrongdoing. Mutual non-disparagement. I forwarded it to the attorney and typed one sentence, will proceed according to the trust and the law. Then I did something my family never expected. I published a tenant charter, clear standards, a maintenance portal, independent inspections, a quarterly report any tenant could read, ownership without secrecy. The reaction was swift. The association praised the transparency. Tenants shared the link. A local paper called it a quiet reset. My parents drove north unannounced 2 days later. They sat at my kitchen table like guests, not hosts. My mother tried a softer script. You're good at this, she said. You always were. I didn't take the bait. I'm responsible for it. I replied. That's different. My father sided. Ryan made mistakes. Mistakes are corrected. I said, patterns are stopped. They left without hugging me. I washed the mugs and felt lighter for it. By the end of the week, the auditors recommended formal recovery. The attorney drafted notices. I signed them with a steady hand, not out of spite, but out of duty to the people who lived under those roofs. That night, I walked the block and looked up at a clear Florida sky. Grandma had been right. Ownership isn't applause. It's stewardship. And stewardship doesn't flinch. The final meeting took place in a plain conference room at the county courthouse. The kind that strips drama down to paper and pens. Ryan arrived late. Jaw tight. Suit rumpled. My parents sat together on one side of the table, hands folded like they were waiting for a verdict they already feared. Our attorneys exchanged brief nods. No speeches. No crowd, just facts lined up in the light. The auditor summarized first. Unauthorized withdrawals, inflated invoices, tenant credits owed, a repayment schedule calculated to the dollar. The attorney slid the numbers across. Ryan stared at them like they were written in another language. "This is excessive," he said finally. "It's exact." The auditor replied. My father cleared his throat. "Can't we handle this as a family?" The mediator looked up. "This is already being handled," she said. As a matter of record, Ryan's lawyer leaned in to whisper. Ryan shook his head, then stopped. Deflating. "Fine," he muttered. "I'll repay. But I'm not admitting anything." "You don't need to," the mediator said. "The documents do." A condition followed that ended the argument. Ryan would be removed from all management roles immediately and permanently. Any future involvement would require unanimous consent of the trustee. Me. Ryan's eyes snapped to mine. "You'd really do this?" "I already did," I said quietly. My mother's lips trembled. "You're choosing strangers over your own brother." I held her gaze. "I'm choosing responsibility over denial." The agreement was signed. Pens lifted. Chairs scraped. Years of imbalance settled into ink. Outside. My parents tried one last time. "Come home," my father said. "Let's put this behind us." I thought of the tenants who'd called to say their heat finally worked. Of the ledger, balanced without secrets. Of Grandma's porch and her calm insistence that ownership means care. "I am home," I said. "I'm just not owned." Ryan left without a word. In the weeks that followed, repayments began. Credits hit tenant accounts. Repairs finished on schedule. The charter held. People noticed. Not with applause, but with trust. That was enough. I kept the houses. I hired managers who reported to standards. Not surnames. I set aside a fund for emergencies, so no family would have to choose between rent and groceries because someone else wanted a shortcut. On a quiet Sunday, I drove down to the bay and sat where Grandma used to. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. If you stayed with Tegan through this story, thank you. If it resonated, your support with a like, a comment, a share, or a subscribe truly means a lot to me. I read every message with real gratitude.